Hello, everyone. Welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe, representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So this is a special time slot for Keeping the Beat and a change from our normal nightly program. We are coming off a fabulous arts integration workshop today with almost 500 participants from 3 countries and many districts in our home state of Tennessee and other states around the country. It's been a great day, and we thought an earlier start time for this presentation alone would work better to follow up from the workshop. My name is Julie Hill. I am chair in the UTM Department of Music and also a proud team member of Keeping the Beat by TNMEA. I have the honor of co-hosting the program this afternoon with Todd Shipley, Tennessee Coordinator of Fine Arts, Alexis Derryberry, TNMEA President-elect, and Lafe Cook, TNMEA President. Today, we will be talking about music education post-COVID-19, using the arts to unite communities and schools during uncertain times. We encourage you all to interact by replying to this live video stream with your questions and comments, which we will respond to throughout the hour with the assistance of our KTB team member, Catherine Sam, on assist this afternoon. One small disclaimer, while this is being streamed live, it will remain on Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference and also our YouTube channel, so your comments will remain a part of that archive. I'm going to now turn it over to Alexis Derryberry. He's going to get us started by summing up a little bit of the amazing arts integration workshop, which only ended about an hour and a half ago. Alexis.
Thank you, Julie. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Bradley Faust. I see that he is watching right now, and he kind of started putting that arts integration workshop together. So thank you, Dr. Faust, and also Dr. Davidson, who's on here, Mr. Drew Davidson. So thank you for that. It was a fantastic workshop. I'm so glad that TNMEA got to be a part of that and help sponsor some of that. And thank you to CMA for also helping sponsor that workshop. It was amazing to interact with our colleagues from India, as well as the Philippines, all over Tennessee and all over the United States. It was just fantastic. There were so many comments, and it was such a positive feeling where I think here in the past few weeks, most of our webinars have had a little bit of a sad feel. It's been negative. How are we going to teach? What are we going to do post-COVID in our classrooms? And this was very uplifting and inspiring. And I do want to give a shout out to all my teachers at my school. I had over 12 teachers that attended, and we are excited. Whatever school looks like next year, we're going to try to do some arts integration. So I'm very excited about that. And we are going to now pass it on to our current TNMEA president, Mr. Lafe Cook. And before I pass it on to him, I do want to let all of our TNMEA members know what an awesome job Lafe did during our COVID crisis, right before our convention, our professional development conference that we do, as well as All-State. Lafe did a fantastic job. He worked tirelessly to make sure we made the right decision, that we kept all of our teachers and our students safe. So as we pass it on to Lafe, I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. I will say that as a high school music teacher, I never thought I would know so much about force majeure clauses in a contract with a hotel. It was stressful, but thank you for setting that up. It gives me the opportunity to say how wonderful all the vendors that we were working with in that moment of cancellation, and most especially the Opryland Hotel, were to deal with. We were so nervous. It was a very stressful time, and everyone we dealt with was superhuman about it. And so thanks, Alexis. And I will say to those who are Tennesseans watching, it has been a distinct honor to be TNMEA president. It was a unique opportunity to serve in this kind of moment in time. And, you know, our philosophy, I had an incredible board to work with. I mean, an amazing group of professionals who were also great communicators. And so as this all started to happen, we knew that we wanted TNMEA's footprint in the conversation to not be a repeat of information you can get other places. And so I think TNMEA's biggest goal through the COVID crisis has been to do advocacy, really Tennessee specific. As a TNMEA member, you're going to get all the same advocacy emails from NAFME that everyone's getting, and the ability to search for information on the web is an ability we all have, and an ever-changing target anyway. And so TNMEA, we didn't want to add to, I'm going to say the noise. We didn't want to add to the noise. We wanted to find meaningful ways that we could, advocate for what we do, where it mattered most in our state and in our, not just in our state capital, but also in our local LEAs. So some of the things that we've been doing on your behalf, you've just recently seen if you're a TNMEA member, because we had a big email go out earlier in the week that sort of outlines some of those things. One of the most meaningful, I think, things that TNMEA does is we engage in a partnership with a number of other arts education organizations and some arts advocacy organizations called Arts Ed Tennessee. And that's under the amazing leadership of Stephen Coleman, who's our executive director of that coalition. And one of the things that this organization was able to do are not just TNMEA, but our visual arts colleagues and our theater arts colleagues, all the way down the line, media arts, all part of this initiative to get the General Assembly to do a joint resolution, something that actually is done in lots of states all the time about arts education and had never been done in the state of Tennessee. And so that was passed. Let me see if I can screen share, because it's kind of neat to see the governor's signature on the document. And I do want you to also see the legislators who helped support this effort. But there you see it's a joint resolution with Senators Dickerson, Gresham, and Massey. And then on the other side, Representative Weaver sponsored. And it's got all the whereases that as music educators, we're going to recognize all these whereases. They're second nature to us. But the bottom line is it's a recognition of the importance of arts education in a student's educational experience. And it speaks to the commitment that not just the federal government, but our state government has made towards that end. And it makes the week, it's in September, have I passed it? Let's see, September 13th through 19th. This coming fall will be Arts Education Week. And so it's got the signature of the governor down here on the bottom, which we're all super excited about that. And so that's one of the things that your TNMEA, if you're a TNMEA member, your dues go to a partnership with other arts organizations to advocate with the General Assembly on your behalf. Christopher Dye, who's a music ed professor at MTSU, worked with a group of us. He was the lead writer on this, and we put together a pretty powerful op-ed that we are hoping that will run in the Tennessean. Of course, that's the Tennessean is a USA Today on paper, so if it runs in the Tennessean, we'll hope it'll run lots of other places too, not just in state, but maybe other places as well. And Dr. Dye did a tremendous job leading that effort. The editor of the paper, Michael Anastasia, when we spoke to him about running it, he was really excited about the topic. And so we're hoping to see that letter run concurrent with the General Assembly still being in session. But the good news is we kind of have a lot of good news, unbelievably, coming out of state government right now. We all worried that funding would be impacted dramatically based on all the sales tax and tourism tax dollars that obviously aren't occurring in Tennessee. And the General Assembly this isn't final yet, but the conversations are saying that they're pretty committed to leaving BEP funding, education funding, without affecting it, and maybe potentially some increases in it, taken from other places. And so that's incredibly great news. And we're hoping that your local school leaders will be paying attention to that news even before it's final, so that as they go into their budget discussions prior to having an official budget from the state, they can see that they don't need to make panicky moves, and they don't need to dramatically affect what we're doing as arts educators in our programs based on a prediction of some funding decrease that likely is not to happen. And so that's more good news coming out of government at the state level. Another thing we want to share with you is today we sent out today, right, Alexis? Did it go out today, the letter to the superintendents? I think it went out today. We wrote a letter to every superintendent in the state of Tennessee. And that letter was really pointing out what school leaders always already know, that the social emotional positives that come from student involvement in the arts are going to be more important than ever. Kids coming off of this quarantine. And, you know, as some of you who maybe teach high school band or beginning to get students back for camp events, if you're like me, you're seeing how, I mean, the word broken is strong, but man, the kids have been affected by this pretty dramatically. And so we wanted the letter to go out to school leaders in your localities, reminding them again of information they already know. Every school principal knows the importance, well, let's say most school principals know the importance of their arts education classes in their schools. And so we wanted to remind them of that and let them know that TNMEA will be there to help them with nuts and bolts details. Those nuts and bolts you'll hear more about later are being worked on and are going to come out of Todd Shipley's office and from his desk a little bit later in the month. And then lastly, I'll point out that some great TNMEA members who are also music supervisors and fine arts supervisors across the state put together an amazing one-pager that just talks about the importance, again, of arts education classes. And it's a really compelling one-page document. This has also been sent out to you. Well, I won't try and share it because I don't have it ready currently, but this has been sent to you in the newsletter, the e-newsletter. It's been on lots of social media posts. Look for this document because it's a one-page document that really is useful to you in your locality. It's something that you can take to your, you can take it to your school board, you can take it to your principal, you can use it with parents to advocate on your behalf. And I think what's most interesting about it is it speaks to every possible advocate you might have. So it talks about the academic related stuff, but it also talks about the economic impact stuff. And that's messaging is compelling to civic leaders, you know, people who are worried about budgets. And it talks about how your arts classes, your music classes create the performers that will one day generate revenue in Tennessee. And it creates the consumers that will one day buy tickets for arts and probably already buy tickets for arts events in Tennessee. And so it's a really compelling one-pager that you can use in almost any setting to advocate for your stuff. And so that's kind of just an overview of what TNMEA has tried to do on your behalf in what has been a really weird time. And if you've got questions for us, be sure and let us know. And we're happy to always answer those. And so I can't remember who I kick it to next.
You kick it to Todd, but can you talk about the Colorado study that we have also?
Yeah, I can do that now, sure. So if you, and that is one of the big things I know that all of us, it's the safety piece of going back to especially our music performance classrooms, large ensemble settings especially. I mean, that's the most nervous part. We care about our students. We worry about their safety. And this is also the area for which there are the fewest answers currently. And so one of the things TNMEA wanted to be part of was the seeking of those answers. There are two major studies taking place right now. One is happening at the University of Colorado, and TNMEA, we were able to redirect some funding that we didn't end up using at the canceled convention. And so TNMEA kicked in $2,000 towards the funding of that University of Colorado study. And that's a really unique collaboration across tons of music organizations, from the lead organizations, the CBDNA, the College Band Directors National Association. But the National Federation of High Schools is the other lead organization, and that's typically thought of as a sports organization. They have a music component, and James Weaver is the music guy with the National Federation. He's a great advocate for music, but lots of state MEAs have been part of this. And so we kicked in some money, and we hope to hear the results of that study, as soon as 2-3 weeks from now. It's going to be close. And I know that's information we all want to have as we look at how we're going to set up our classrooms. And that information is not there yet. but we're trying to contribute to make sure that answer gets to us as quick as we can, financially contribute.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Shipley. I'm the Fine Arts Coordinator at the Tennessee Department of Education. I wanted to speak a little bit this afternoon about what's happening at both the national and the state level to help support arts education, and more importantly, to kind of learn some of the ways that these things are intersecting in our state and local policy as we prepare to go back to schools in the fall. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Arts is Essential document. So the document that Lafe mentioned a few minutes ago from the Tennessee Fine Arts Supervisors Council is a great local document that really adds a unique Tennessee flavor and speaks very well, I think, to stakeholders in Tennessee. But on the national level, if you've not seen the Arts is Essential document, I would encourage you to go to the NAFME website. You can find this information and some other toolkits there. But this statement is a really powerful advocacy tool that you can use in coordination with that Tennessee specific document. And it is a statement of support for arts education, like I said, led mostly by NAFME and a group called C-Day, of which I'm a representative. And this document is unique in that it is a unified arts education statement that has been endorsed by over 50 national and international organizations, and it's really quite a powerful tool. A couple of things it does is it emphasizes the equitable delivery of arts education. So in whatever way that's going to look like, and we know that looks different from district to district, school to school, and especially state to state. And it calls out the supports of arts ed to educational, social, and emotional well-being, points out some critical 21st century skills, which are also embedded deeply in our Tennessee Fine Arts standards. Things like self-awareness, self-efficacy, perseverance, social awareness, relationship skills, all those soft skills that we know happen every day in the classroom. And these are the things that we instill in our children in the class. I do want to point out that I know that many arts educators always turn the conversation to, well, why are we talking about these soft skills and not talking about the inherent benefits of arts education and arts for art's sake, music for music's sake? Do note that those are the conversations that we have at the national level, but this document is targeting specific stakeholders and a diverse audience of stakeholders, anyone from parents to school board members to school level administrators and anyone in between. And so understanding that most of our stakeholders that we engage with and interact with don't necessarily speak that same language of arts for art's sake. So we have to really speak to what does empower them. And these other skills are enormously important things that we give our students through arts education classrooms and in the classroom every day. It also speaks to the school environment, how the arts play a key role in helping students and families build and sustain community and cultural connections. We know through research that the arts are something that attract kids to school and keep students in school. And the document also points out how arts education is part of a well-rounded education as part of ESSA. It specifically calls out music and the arts, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then it also states that arts education must remain central to that well-rounded education. So in with that, I want to talk briefly about ESSA. This is a federal legislation that many of you hopefully are familiar with, but this is the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Ed Act, one of those things that you may have learned about in your teacher prep programs and probably haven't thought of since, but is very important. And that was signed into law in 2015 and supersedes what all of us probably know, or those of us that have been in the field for a decade or more, as the No Child Left Behind Act. And this specifically calls out something called a well-rounded education, this term that arts educators have used for decades. And this well-rounded education idea replaces the core subjects language of NCLB, which is really important. And one really important part of well-rounded education is what is federally defined as a well-rounded education, and that includes music and the arts. Those two words are actually, music and the arts, are actually listed in that definition. That opens up a great deal of funding possibilities through federal funding streams like Title I. Title I funds can be used for the support of music and arts programs. So if you're a Title I school, those things can support programs. Title II, which is professional development, and also Title IV, which supports safe and healthy students, the well-rounded education, and also technology. There's lots of flexibility in federal funding that now opens up because of that well-rounded definition. I also wanted to speak briefly about the CARES Act funding. These are questions that probably everyone has had, and how does this affect our local schools? How does this affect me as an educator? The CARES Act established a education stabilization fund to the tune of almost $31 billion. $3 billion of that is for governors to have as an emergency education relief fund, and that's at each state's individual governor how that's used. $13 billion of that stabilization fund is for elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund, which is exactly what it affects you as a K-12 educator. And then $14 billion were set aside for as the higher ed emergency relief fund. So the Tennessee allocation of that $31 million is right at $260 million. And these are one-time funds, so meaning that they will disappear after their initial allocation and awarding. And they are very much like a block grant. So they're granted to states. Districts actually have to apply for the funding and specify how they're going to use it. And what the Tennessee allocation will do is provide relief for existing needs and also help planning for future needs. Allowable uses of these funds include things like purchasing educational technology, hardware, software, and connectivity. Providing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, planning for long-term closures. So if we have additional closures that happen this next school year, how do school districts support that through the CARES Act funding? Addressing the needs of special populations. So people like ELLs and those that are involved in special education classes, how do those unique populations need to be supported? Providing mental health supports, and also any other activities that's necessary to maintaining the operation of schools and employing existing staff. So lots of things that the funding can be used to support.
Todd,
Next,
yes.
yes.
I'm going to interrupt you just to point out something I want to make sure folks caught.
Definitely.
And that is that districts have to apply for the money.
Yes, yeah. And here's the thing. This is not something that's going to be like you're not going to claim all of your district's pot for arts education initiatives, but do know that yes, districts have to apply for it, but districts every year, as part of how they obtain state and federal funds, submit what's called a consolidated funding application through the Department of Education, through the state, and the state acts as the pass-through for those federal funds to come down. So every district already does this anyway, and they're very familiar with this process. So those at your district offices who deal specifically with federal programming or talking with the state Department of Education with regarding budget issues, they more than likely have already submitted this application. I would not expect any district to refuse the funding at all. I do want to move briefly to talk a little bit about how decisions are made in Tennessee with regard to education. I think as we enter this time, everyone, like has been said earlier by several people on tonight's panel, is that everyone is looking for answers and looking to what does the fall look like? How do we continue teaching our kids? How do we continue providing for our students? And it's really important to understand how these decisions are made so that you can advocate locally at your local school level, local school board level for your programs. And do understand that the vast majority of education decisions, especially those that might affect arts programs and teachers, are made at the local level by boards of education or LEAs or your central office. And it's important to understand the roles of the many different decision makers. So generally, the governor sets the policy agenda and budget priorities. The Tennessee General Assembly enacts, amends, and repeals laws, and they also pass the budget, the state budget. The State Board of Education adopts rules and policy to implement those laws. They also set standards and set standards for teacher licensure. The Department of Education, where I work, implements those laws. We also set strategy, and we provide support for districts and schools. The key important component to this, though, is that local board of education and your LEA, your school central office. They adopt local policies and procedures. They manage the finances of the district. They also operate schools, and determine and approve the curriculum that's used locally. So understand that the vast majority of decisions that affect you and your programs are being made right in your backyard. And it's important for you to be a part of those conversations and to make sure that you are inserted and have a seat at the table to discuss your programs and to advocate for your students. And so because of that, I want to next talk about some of the resources for planning and also some support documents from the Tennessee Department of Education. At this point, I would say that many of you have probably seen the recently released TDOE Reopening Schools Overview Guide for LEAs. And this is a support toolkit for school districts to use to help make decisions. And you'll also notice that over the next couple of weeks, the department will be releasing a series of additional toolkits and supplemental guidance that deals with academics, finance, nutrition, and a number of other different topics. And one other thing that's important to understand about these guidance sets and these series of guidances that you'll see coming from the department is that they are not mandatory. It is simply guidance to help districts plan what questions to ask at the local level and support in developing a decision-making process. And that's simply because of that local control factor. The State Department of Education doesn't run the schools, the General Assembly doesn't run the schools, the local school boards, the LEAs, are the ones actually making those decisions. In part of that, we see a definite need for there to be some additional information from the fine arts world and for arts education. And so we are looking at the creation of a fine arts best practices guide that would supplement the academics toolkit. And we have formed a really diverse committee of over 60 people that are giving support and lending their expertise to support a reopening of schools focus group. And hopefully we will release this document. Our target goal at this point is the first part of July, knowing that we are, of course, right near the beginning of the school year, but we have to be flexible, and we know that this situation continues to evolve. We want to also be mindful to include things like the upcoming University of Colorado study and the number of other documents that are coming out from our national service orgs as well, like NAFME. And what this fine arts document will do will be considerations for district admins, school admins, and art teachers to help make decisions at that local level. We'll talk a little bit about some of the questions you may have about the specifics of going back to school a little bit later in tonight's conversation. But do note that at your local level, you should be an active participant in the planning for 2020-21 and beyond. Do note that districts start making funding decisions for the following school year in October. So we'll start talking about 2021-22 in October, and you need to be a part of those conversations too. Use existing and forthcoming guidance that you see in the field. The goal from the guidance document that my office will help produce is not to rewrite the landscape or to solve and answer all the questions that you have, but is to pull out those major considerations and those major stress points to frame those in a way that will speak to district and school administrators and help you as a teacher advocate for your programs. NAFME, ACDA, ABA, the American Bandmasters Association, CBDNA, and NFHS all have terrific guidance out there, and we don't want to rewrite that guidance because there's so much good stuff already out there and so many great ideas. So what this document will do is simply point you in those directions. If you need more information about marching band, perhaps you'll check out some of the from the High School Band Directors Association documents, or if you need more information about singing and about choral activities, you can check out the information coming from ACDA. And there are many existing resources that you can use to help plan your instruction, regardless of what that looks like in the fall, if it's in person, if it's a hybrid model, or if it's completely online, or if there are changes throughout the school year that we are constantly shifting and evolving as this happens. I'll work with TNMEA in the next few days too to create a resource page to where we can start curating some of these great national ideas so that we can have these all in one place curated for members and music educators to look through. And Alexis, I think I send it back to you at this point.
I actually wanted to ask a question, Todd.
Sure.
Here on Keeping the Beat, we have done several different episodes on advocacy, and you actually did one as well that was fantastic. So everybody should check that out in the archive. But when you say be a part of those conversations, for those people that haven't watched those episodes, what are some things they can do? How do they become part of those conversations?
Well, I think first and foremost is that we all know that arts educators, if you are the vast majority of us, if you're a band director, a choir director, general music teacher, you're probably the only one of those at your school. Many of us may be lucky to have an assistant or to have co-teachers that teach on staff with us, and that's great. But most of us work in silos. And I think that it's really important to understand, even if you're a silo, you are the content level expert. You're the one that was hired to do that job. It's part of your job to advocate for your program. And really, there are so many different stakeholders that are involved in the advocacy process, but really the people who are making decisions are school principals, local boards of education, and central office. Sometimes, I'll say most of the time, teachers struggle with, maybe they're sometimes told not to interact with the school board or with central office, but it's all about finding who is on your side, developing those key relationships. And the first thing is starting with the principal. That's the one that's going to affect you the most. That's the person who's setting the guidelines for your building. And in many districts, especially our smaller districts, principals are given a lot of autonomy to make those decisions. And so there may not be a district example or a district idea of what school looks like in the fall. Most of our districts in Tennessee actually have less than 8 schools. So understanding that the principal holds most of the power, and it's about developing that relationship. You must have conversations with them. You have to simply find those ways to insert yourself into, and really, I think it's all about making sure that you're prepared with research backed. We've got plenty of research out there right now, the stuff that's happening at the University of Colorado, but also all the other documents from NAFME, from everywhere. That's what we have right now as our research and our data. So we have to compile those best practices, come armed with solutions, and don't always come with the problems. And do know that your principals, your administrators are facing a lot right now. I know that sometimes it feels like they don't pay attention to the arts, but you have to realize that we are the ones that are solely focused on the arts, and we get to have fun every day doing this work. But our principals have to worry about everything. They make this split-second decisions every day that they don't know what to do, and it's very hard to see even a week down the road sometimes as an administrator. So make sure that you're setting yourself up to have a great relationship by presenting solutions and to come armed with those expert opinions and really to help drive the fact that you can work with the administration to figure out how to make this work. And like I've always been telling people right now, I think that we really have to make sure that we know that what we do and why we do it, the what and why of teaching music and the arts, should not change at this point. The how is going to probably change for the next little bit, if not permanently in some ways. But I think we really must use this as an opportunity to help shape what arts education will look like over the next decade using this moment. And this is our way to do that, by simply advocating for the programs, and also making sure that, like I said, with the how changing, we've got to come armed with those solutions that work for us, because we are the subject matter experts.
That was an excellent answer to that, Todd. Thank you so much. Julie, you mentioned something today during the arts integration workshop. You said that nobody's against the arts. Can you finish what you said today? That was a great statement.
Yeah, I just found that I think there's this barrier that we build up. As Todd said, we focus on what we do, and that makes sense. That's our job. But then I think it's really easy to demonize our leaders and just think that they're not paying attention to us. But have you gone to them and said, hey, here's a suggestion of how we can fix what we're saying is wrong, rather than go, you hear that all the time with good leadership, don't go with a complaint, go with a solution. And I think that's really true. No one that I know of in administration hates the arts and wants to stamp it out and only have athletics. And, they might not understand all the altruistic things that we mentioned earlier, which is why we need various documents that Todd referred to. But once they're reasonable people, and if you explain to them, it's usually going to come down to a matter of time and money. Most everything does. So if you can come up with some creative solutions to those and present those in a logical, not aggressive, angry way, more often than not, I think they will want to be your champion and help you. It only makes them look better.
Excellent. And I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, Julie. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing on the higher ed end of the spectrum of fine arts?
Sure. And I do, you all know this, but I apologize to those watching for my Illuminati status. My office window is in the west, and right now is the peak, so I'm like squatting down to try and not be glowing. It'll go away in a few minutes. Alexis, with regard to anything specifically or the safety concern, I see we have some questions coming up from the survey, but the safety aspect?
I guess just we are not in the higher ed area of music education. I think sometimes we forget about what you guys have going on for our pre-service teachers and what you need to make sure that you guys are successful.
Well, thankfully, a group of music department chairs who have my job across the state, there's more than 60 on this group. We meet once a week and just proactively try and help each other. I guess typically, none of us ever disparage another program, but, we're always recruiting and trying to get the best students. And right now, I'm sure that's still underlying, but no one's talking about it at all. All we're talking about doing is keeping our cards away from our vest and helping each other. Who's got the best idea? We've got tons of shared Google Docs. We figure out the next topic at hand. For example, last week, I mentioned, the fiscal year budgets are coming to a close. Plexiglass is in short supply. What other items do we need in terms of technology or just tangible objects that we need to get ordered now before budgets either hopefully don't change, but before this fiscal year is shut out. But also these things are going to take time. They're all back ordered. It takes time to tape off a floor in the grocery stores where we've seen these pathways and to decide extra storage, outdoor rehearsal facilities or non-traditional indoor facilities that perhaps won't be in use this fall. So that group has been great. But I will say on our campus at UT Martin, our vice chancellor has been really good about listening to the leaders, and basically he's listening to us. And we don't meet with we used to meet where he would meet with the deans and then the deans would meet with the chairs, and things were lost in translation. And we never at the chair level where but we feel like a lot gets dumped on us. We feel like we never get to push back in real time. So we started having meetings all together with the deans and the department chairs and directors. And that's been just brought a world of change. So we were on a call and they're like, well, nobody knows what, it's just all the uncertainty and maybe by July 1st. And the chairs are like, no, we have to make a call by June 1st because we have to change the schedule. We have to figure out workloads. We have to figure out what we have to order. And they were like, okay. So we made a decision yesterday. We had to have all of our changes made in what's called Banner, whatever keeps up with your classes and workload and course assignments. And we had to sort of decide, okay, are we going to be on campus per class, not as a campus, but each class based on the roster and the safety needs that we are all, the experts in our field. So they're deferring to us to figure that out and not look to them for that information. I think that's very important too, that we sometimes look to those leaders. They don't know. They're not a specialist in music, or it's like, we got to figure that out and then help educate them and tell them what we need in a proactive way. So just to say, it's all across the board. So for example, my husband is chair in the history department. Well, our students registered for classes months ago. So he knows he's got a gen ed with 60 students. They shouldn't meet in person. They should not do that. But by getting training this summer, everyone was already teaching online, but a lot of people weren't prepared. But now we have training, we're redoing our classes so that we can assess our courses and make sure this is really high quality instruction. But on the other hand, that frees up spaces for the music folks and the arts and several other of the lab components if they need equipment or just to be together in order to be successful and meet those student learning outcomes and assessment pieces. If we've got to be on campus, okay, I might have a class where David used to meet history, but it's where our teachers can teach private lessons because that space is unused now. So it takes some communication, it takes some decision making and saying, okay, 10 or less is fine. 10 or more, let's figure out a way to have it. I see some comments on our questionnaire, but an alternating schedule. So maybe we put students, instead of meeting 3 times a week, they meet once a week, then with a video component where they upload part of their wind ensemble or their choir music instead of being together. And some of that will create better playing and singing, actually, more time for higher quality practice time and assessment of those individual accountability pieces. Trying not to be too long-winded here, Alexis, but those are some of the big things. Looking at storage, our instrument storage room, probably like many that are listening right now, that's COVID waiting to happen in a Petri dish. I mean, we go in our storage room, boom. So who can keep their instruments on their person? I mean, we have dorms to deal with, which is a whole nother situation to worry about. But like, we're really going to map out squares in large spaces. I'm campaigning right now for part of our ag pavilion and one of our indoor tennis courts. So every student can have a square, and it is their little square. They put their little music stand, their chair, their big instrument, if they play a sousaphone or something large like that, and that's their safe space. And the sousaphone players have rotating towels that catch their condensation, and they wash those on a regular basis. So those are some of the things. Storage is certainly a big concern, other than the rehearsal spaces for us. I think about the drum line, trying to rehearse 150, some have 300 in their bands. How are we going to just the time commitment in terms of getting to and from those classes and those rehearsals? We're trying to build all that into the schedule so the students don't suffer, and they shouldn't bear the brunt of, oh, I've got to walk 20 minutes now to pick up my instrument and back. So we're building all that transition time, wiping things down, all of that needs to be built into the class time. So those are just a few of the things that, we have decided on and are moving forward with.
So much of that, though, Julie, is completely applicable to secondary.
Right.
And to Todd's point about you have to advocate for your program, you're the content specialist. We don't have department chairs who are doing that on our behalf. And so that you just glossed over a ton of topics that I imagine have put a light bulb off in people watching this webinar. And that's what we have to do for ourselves, to Todd's point.
Well, and I'm not saying that we have the answers, but we feel like my faculty are working really responsibly to create all these, we want as much on campus as possible, but done in a safe way. So if there's anything that we're doing, again, this group of chairs across the state, this is not a UTM thing, but I'm sharing all this information with them. So anything that we can do to help folks feel like a little reassured and like they have some examples to look at. And we're also at the same time, though, just in case, we're making sure every single class has an online backup piece just in case a student should get sick. We're even practice rooms, assigning students in pods to various practice rooms. So if they get sick, they're kind of with that group in their dorm, and then we can safely isolate them until they get better, but continue to provide instruction while they have COVID, because I'm sure cases are going to pop up. So trying not to just constantly be in a reactionary mode and kind of plan 2-3 scenarios. It's time consuming, but it gives me a sense of peace at least.
I think that's an excellent point, Julie, to be proactive rather than reactive. And I think all the things that you mentioned give a lot of people some things to think about and think ahead for their program.
Alexis, I see a lot on here. I'm trying to sort of synthesize the survey questions that we got.
Thank you to everybody who signed in and put in some questions for our questionnaire. We appreciate that.
I see several about sharing instruments or cleaning instruments, and also ones about singing. I could comment on the one about sharing instruments. For example, I know public schools would not do this, K through 12, but we have methods courses that train students to be music teachers. And we've really adjusted our schedule. We don't think methods courses can be taught well remotely. We just, it's like teaching percussion methods last spring, whatever, that's not good instruction, no matter the best teacher in the world. But just trying to adjust our course offerings, even as much as yesterday. Percussion methods, I think that we can do, because I can assign every student their own implements so they don't have to touch someone else's stuff, basically. I think that that's doable. I think it's harder with a class like woodwind and brass methods, because I don't know about you all, but we don't have enough school-owned trumpets, trombones, tubas for each student to have their own of each of those, so they would have to rotate them. And we don't feel we can clean those in a way that allows students to share instruments. So we are not sharing wind and brass instruments this fall at all. So we've just changed it to where we offer string methods, which we have enough of, with string methods for each student, and percussion methods for the fall. And then we will offer woodwind and brass methods in the spring, hoping that things are better by then, or there's a, what's that word? Where it fixes stuff. Like, antidote. That's wrong. Vaccine. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Stage fright.
Excellent. And I'll speak to the general music equipment. And I see that Amy Walworth at Macon County, hey, Amy, she talked about what is the best way to sanitize instruments. And I think we're going to have to let go of teaching recorder. That makes some of us happy and some of us not. But we're going to have to let go of teaching recorder, and that's okay. You can still teach the fingers and have them do that at home. Somebody asked about different online platforms to teach and engage your students. And there's a great program called Flipgrid. And I had a lot of success using Flipgrid, where you actually teach your students and then they respond with a video. So that is one way you could still get recorded if you wanted, but I think we're gonna have to move on to other things, lots of movement. There was a great workshop yesterday or webinar yesterday by NAFME that discussed using and creating individual student music packs and using chopsticks that you can disinfect, or use plastic chopsticks that you can put in that school washing machine like we all do with our recorders to sanitize those. So I think we've just got to rethink what we do and how we do it. Just like Todd said earlier, we can still do ukulele, we can wipe those down with the guidelines that our schools and system give us. So it's just rethinking.
Another one, Alexis, is singing while wearing masks. I see some choir questions here, and I know that you have pulled up, I think, the report that came out yesterday. I don't know if you want to move to that.
I do. I can show everybody that. We've all were anxiously awaiting the ACDA COVID committee that released their document yesterday. And I think that singing with a mask is not a good idea, that a lot of research is showing that, but the ACDA document does have a lot of good information. And let me share that and show you guys what it looks like. And it's not, and it doesn't just have stuff if you are upper secondary. So make sure that you look at this. We've got middle school, junior high, upper elementary school, and then each section has an explanation and suggestions on face-to-face with physical distancing protocols, hybrid instruction, and remote instruction only. So it's a very valuable document. It is 108 pages. I've only made it through the first half, but I did want to show you, if you haven't seen this document yet, the great advice that it has in there. It goes into discussing how to actually make that happen. And then at the end of each section, it has great links. It has Derek Fox. If you guys have been paying attention, Dr. Derek Fox has been putting together a choral collective, and it doesn't only have information for choral classes and choral ensembles, it has lessons for elementary, junior high. So make sure you check those out and you don't have to remake the wheel for next year. It's got links to all of these, and I've looked at these lessons and they are quality lessons. So make sure, if you get a chance, guys, to look through this. And I'm sure this will be included in the document that Todd's focus group is putting together.
If you were someone who was aware of the initial ACDA conversation in the early parts of the quarantine, this document is far less gloomy than that initial communication was. And so to our choral colleagues, you're going to want to check this out. It will help you feel better.
I want to address, and just looking to, in the survey questions that we asked Alexis in advance, several of those ask about non-metropolitan areas and school systems and access to Wi-Fi and hotspots and devices when they're in a remote area. And just, I know for those of you watching who don't know me, and I'm sure that's a lot of people, I don't know if this will work, but is that Tennessee, or is that Tennessee to y'all? Which one? Okay, got it. So we are in the northwest corner, YMCA, right up here. Memphis is here, Nashville is here, Paducah, Jackson, around us for about an hour. We are really the center of of the universe in Northwest Tennessee. I mean, but there's not another large town. It's like Martin, Union City, and then you have to go over to where Catherine, who's moderating tonight in Paris, is kind of the next biggest town. So I very much always have the rural schools in the back of my mind because that is us. And so I'm always kind of like, hey, don't forget about us. We don't have that. We don't have that. You know, our buses have to travel 30 minutes to get from school to school. So I think with regard to that question, if you're thinking about K through 12, you know, where we are in Weakley County, if we can do it, anybody can do it because there's 40+% of students that have unreliable Wi-Fi or internet access or devices. And we are providing devices to each of those students if they don't have one. And our county mayor and our city mayors are paying for hotspots like crazy. So people who have been complaining, like my administrative assistant lives out in the country and she's been having to come into the office to take our Zoom meetings because she doesn't have good internet. So all those people who have been asking for that in rural communities for years, like now's the time to push and get that because people are going to give it to you. So if you have that issue, I would say you need to talk to your city leaders and say, our students have to have this kind of technology or they're going to fall even farther behind. And it's not fair. It's not treating students equally with equal access. So it's a really a true disability, just like anything else is, and they need to have that opportunity. So I would say just demand that. There's another question, I think it was Ed Freitag maybe, or a couple of others that mentioned ensembles. And of course, that's all of our biggest concern, I think, is that for the camaraderie, all those reasons that we know, listening ears. And so everyone wants to try to do in person as much as possible if we can do that safely. However, if you have a student that gets sick, or if you're doing a chamber ensemble that has to meet remotely, my director of bands, Dr. John Earler, just passed this on to me at like 6 a.m. this morning, and I showed it to the team here right before the class, and they gave me the green light to go ahead and share this. So I'm going to do a screen share and just show you all this platform. I mean, it's not as great as being in person, but we've been saying whoever invents the ability to rehearse in live time or perform in live time in different locations is going to be a Brazilianaire. And I think this looks, that was a joke, I'm sorry. I think this looks pretty slick. It's Jam Kazam. So I want to give you all just a little overview of this.
JamKazam is a new live music platform for musicians. With JamKazam, musicians can play music together in real time from different locations over the internet as if they are sitting in the same room.
Sorry, let me find it to stop it. Where are you, internet? Trying to cut it off. Just to talk amongst yourselves. Sorry, let me find it. Oh my goodness. There we go.
I was going to say that's going to be a great program for people to use. I know a lot of people who don't understand about what we do. They think we can go on a Zoom and everybody sing or play and it come together. You have to really educate our administrators and people that are wanting that to happen, that it's not impossible. It has to be done in post-production and put together before it's shown. So I think using that, and what's that called again, Julie? Jam Kazam.
Jam Kazam, and it does take an interface. I don't know if y'all saw the little component that people had their microphone plugged into. It kind of looks like a little baby mixer, and the interface is about $200. And I know that's significant, but you could have one of those with several groups of students running multiple mics to them, or them sharing a microphone. So it takes a little bit of money on the front end to set it up, but it could be a viable solution for some situations, I think. Do you think we've gotten most of those questions, Alexis?
There was one from a private lesson teacher.
Let's see if I can find that one.
I think I have it here. From Preston Light, what are some things that we as private lesson teachers can do in our instruction with students to help reinforce and support you, the band, choir, music teachers, going forward in the new instruction models that will be happening in the future?
That's easy. That person's doing it already.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
by keeping them playing, by engaging with them musically in a meaningful one-on-one way, that person's already doing the job we want them to do.
I was going to say that as well. I know so many private lessons instructors that have done Zoom or distance lessons for some time now, and really they probably have, or certainly do have a leg up on all of us classroom-based teachers. I would definitely utilize those colleagues as a professional development tool. Like have them sit down and give you best practices of what they do. We know that you can certainly apply what they're doing as far as if you're delivering remote instruction to a student or a small group of students, but there's certainly some aspects of that too that can certainly support if you are someone that has to go into more of a chamber ensemble based or chamber choir based instruction instead of your typical larger full ensemble for next year. So I think learning what they do, how they interact with the students, the process that they use by which to model in those lessons, I think is very important.
There's also an opportunity to use that online format to water down the number of students you're teaching in an ensemble setting. And so if you've got a band of 50 kids and your band room fits 25 socially distanced to play their instruments, the other 25 are in a classroom that you've discovered is empty during your band period, and they're engaging with a music professional virtually and don't have to have instruments in that setting.
That's a great point, Lafe. And that's exactly what the ACDA document recommends, is having pods of students in empty rooms and using some sort of virtual way to teach them, or if you're lucky enough to have a second teacher on your staff.
There's some advantages too in talking about the non-traditional classroom, but and looking at spaces where, I call it sort of cannibalizing spaces on campus that we know might not be in use. There's some opportunities to reach some different audiences, to get some good PR. If you're rehearsing outside on a pretty day and you've got certain folks walking by that would never come in your fine arts building, hello, that looks great. We're making it work. They can see the student success. So I think there's some benefits to thinking outside the box of where you always rehearse or always perform. And that's true anytime, but I think those opportunities might be more prevalent in the fall.
Excellent point. I wanted to just answer one question that somebody had on the Facebook page, and they said, can you still do recorder if students have their own recorder? I don't know that I would advocate for playing in the classroom, again, because of the aerosols that perhaps come out unless you're spread out. We'll have to wait and see and get some more information on that. But absolutely, if they have their own recorders, I wasn't suggesting that they shouldn't play. So I think, yes, if they have their own, they can still do that.
I'm glad you answered that, because I took that to be recording devices and not recorder.
Maybe I read it wrong. I don't know. I was thinking recorder.
So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see if we have any. There's one here from Stephen Michael. Is TNMEA joining with other education groups, ed groups, advocacy arms about releasing rainy day funds for the very clearly a day with much rain situation that is the upcoming school year?
Well, so the answer to that is maybe not exactly in the way you framed it. Most school districts, local LEAs, have a rainy day fund. And I know here in Kingsport, that has been something that we've definitely been talking about. And so it may be that that's regionally, locally in your own school division is something you should find out if it exists, because to your point, whoever's asking that question, if this ain't a rainy day, I'm not sure when it's going to rain harder than this. At the state level, Todd may know more about what a rainy day fund looks like at the state level.
I can't really speak on the specifics of it, but what I would say is that people like Stephen Coleman at Arts Ed TN would be the most well-versed to speak on that. And the thing that Stephen is going to share with you, and that anyone from Arts Ed TN, and by the way, if you're not a member of Arts Ed TN, you should join. It is free. We had a series of arts advocacy workshops back in October that almost just succinctly prepared us for this moment. And it's kind of interesting how that timing worked out. Is that those of you that attended that, I think, are in such a great place to lead these conversations locally. But I would definitely recommend joining with that group, because they are the ones representing all arts organizations and all arts educators in the state that are advocating with and lobbying legislators. Otherwise, I would say that the most logical step there is to directly contact your state senators and state representatives. They're the ones that hold the keys to that. You know, certainly my department has no say in that. That's the rainy day fund is a pot that's for the entire state. And I'm not sure the logistics there, but your representatives and your state senators are the ones that need to hear about that for sure.
Perfect, Todd. Thank you. I think we're going to move on to our last point. We're at an hour, and we've got just one other topic to shortly wrap up. And that is the show, the webinar that we've had on since the middle of March, that started out something I'm proud to say in our music department at UT Martin, and was specifically done just to help our students when they went home. I kind of freaked out, and all of us had the gigs canceled. Our initial reaction, was like, oh, okay, let's help our kids, but let's also help artists that are out of work. And that's just kind of the way that started. And then when our state music conference was canceled, Lafe and Alexis, who knew me pretty well, Lafe not so much, now very well, I think, just took a chance on a pitch from a crazy lady in the Northwest corner, and got the CMA Foundation folks, Tiffany and Fallon, on board. And then we changed over in like 3 days to Keeping the Beat by TNMEA. And it's been a real pleasure. And I wanted to just say tonight is our 49th program since starting with 10 programs on Corona Connection, and then pivoting to this wonderful program, and the people that I've met along the way and worked with here on the screen, and others. I'll mention them in just a second, but I wanted to take just a minute to this short video we just released actually last night, has just a short overview of what Keeping the Beat by TNMEA is about. And I'd like the opportunity to just share that with you all and thank a few people before we wrap up tonight. Hit pause this time first before I go back to it. While we're here and we talk about that, I also want to show on our TNMEA website where folks can see at home the upcoming artists that we have. So sorry, my monkey's in the background there. But this is our State Music Association page, and all the upcoming artists are here on the left. So you can see the great people we have coming up. Next will be Dr. Bradley Faust, who was integral in the workshop today and is listening tonight, I know. Bradley Kent, James Stevens with Music for All, Brad and Jerry are legendary Texas music educators. Lindsay L., guitarist, composer, has a huge Instagram following. And then Joan Jett and Kenny Laguna, as I think we mentioned earlier, on July 7th. Spencer Lightsey is with the Kennedy Center, and on and on. Loneka Batista, I think I'm saying her name right. Alexis, great music educator, a choir person. So lots of variety coming up on the program, which that's what it's been all about the entire time, is what all careers in music could be inspiring to those watching from home, so they know, hey, you know what, I can do that, and here's how you do it. And that's been a really great part of the show. You can find all 49 programs, and I don't know how many it'll be by the time we end, I think around 60, and they are already in categories per profession on both Facebook and our YouTube channel. So if you're not a Facebooker, you can find those there. We've missed a few on YouTube, but with technology things, but for the most part, the full repository is on Facebook, but almost everything is on YouTube. And the whole point of this was really, it was nice to have great live engagement, but as Lafe says, it's the repository, and that this funding will have been put to good use in the long term to help people. So we hope you all will use that. I don't know, Lafe, if you want to speak on that at all before I do a few thank yous.
We will thank you for the pitch, and for TNMEA to have something meaningful to be part of during this weird time. I know I speak for the entire board. We were thrilled to have purpose. You know, when our convention got canceled, we were all distraught, and you know, that's where we provide all this incredible professional development, and you helped us find a way to fill the gap. So thank you to you, Julie.
No, absolutely happy to do it. It's been a great road, but we are ready to wrap it up. Alexis and I are tired.
We have learned so much. OBS, Zoom. It's one thing that has been great, and I think Lafe said this the other day. One thing that has been great is the relationship we've built with each other, and especially Julie, because you're just such a go-getter and such a make it happen kind of person.
I think that everybody here tonight is, or this afternoon, is the same way, and like-minded, like-hearted, and all work hard to help each other. So it's been a beautiful experience. I'm grateful for.
I'll say one more thing, and that's having taught in Tennessee for almost 25 years, we are a geographically challenged state for us to come together and feel close, because I'm 9 hours from you.
Yeah.
Julie, I am 9 hours from you, and I live in the same state.
Private jet, it's hard.
That's another story. But I will tell you that this has made the state our very long, geographically spread state. This whole experience has made our state feel smaller, and I hope others feel that same way.
Our state, our country, and our world in part two. Lafe, thank you so much, Dr. Cook, for those wise words. I'm going to thank a few people, and then I will do the wrap up if everybody's okay with that.
If we didn't get to your question, we will answer those in email, guys, because I know this time goes by so quickly. But thank you to those of you that did put questions. We will get to those via email.
This is the only time on all the programs, and we won't do this again, but I do want to just thank a few people who have been working, I can't total the hours, since mid-March for no pay to make this work. And I just want to acknowledge them at the very least. So from our UTM music staff, Chelsea Jones, Lizzie Emmons, Katie Smith, and Caitlin Dowland. Serving also as staff, but they're my graduates, and I was just we needed more help, and I was like, girls, I need help. So Catherine Sam, who's on tonight, and Carrie Radcliffe, I'm so proud of these two, and they're going to change the world, and Mom could not be more proud of you. They came to our rescue when we needed it, and they've stuck with us every single day since. CMA thank yous to Tiffany Kearns and Fallon Keith. They didn't know me from anyone, but trusted Lafe and Alexis, and they have been extremely supportive. And Tiffany, yes, we still call you Oz, but I know you're real. So look forward to meeting you. And TNMEA thank yous most of all to Dr. Lafe Cook on tonight, who is now a dear friend. And Alexis, my sister, you deserve all the praise in the world. I'm a patient person, but I'm nothing compared to you. Your fortitude is nothing but inspiring. So thank you all for a great experience, and I'm going to do the wrap up. All right, tune in weeknights, except for today, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. To keep watching Keeping the Beat live, and remember to tell your friends about our program. Upcoming artists we've already covered, so I think I don't need to repeat that, and so we can keep it short and wind it up here. Let's see, one thing I did want to mention is we are working to schedule one final program, and I think it may end up being the last program, which I think is Alexis, July 15th, but I'm meeting with them tomorrow to discuss this, so don't hold me to that. But that department chairs group that I mentioned that's working together, I think that could be really helpful to not just music students and parents, but as Lafe mentioned earlier, and Todd, these are common issues. So if we can get a lot of people on that night and ask some questions, I think we could get some really great information, and we'll have more safety information by then as well. So I think that's going to be great timing and a nice way to wrap up the program overall. And I just want to say thank you again to everyone tonight. Todd, Lafe, Alexis, wonderful show. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.